Strong words and strong feelings from Fremont, Nebraska. To respond, we are joined by a familiar face, especially if you were in a movie theater this weekend. Actor, activist, and co-founder of Voto Latino, Rosario Dawson. And from Houston, Texas, a man who deals with the reality of illegal immigration every day, Harris County's first Latino sheriff, Adrian Garcia. Rosario, if you had shot your new box office hit Unstoppable in Fremont, Nebraska, and had a chance to sit in that coffee shop with those people, what would you have wanted to say to them?
It looks like we could have, actually. There's a lot of freight trains going through there. You know, one, I would say change is scary. There's been an influx of people coming into this country for the majority of our history. You know, I think it was very scary for the Native people to see people showing up and going, we hate Europe, can we move in? You know, I think that was really scary as well. It's part of American history that we've had illegal immigrants and we've had legal immigrants who have come in and changed the fabric of this country. The trains that those freights were going across were laid down by the Chinese. We've created internments, we've created all the different types of things to respond to it, but eventually we have to deal with the fact that they're here and they're here to stay. So I feel like that's the thing it's going to be the most important, is making sure that as these populations are starting to really, they're going to be permanently living with each other, to understand each other's cultures and to start working together as Americans. Sheriff Garcia, I'm hearing some fear in those voices. I'm hearing frustration with government, frustration with unenforced laws, and a little bit of bewilderment of how did this happen. They're talking about how far they are from the southern border. Well, New York City is a lot farther from the southern border, and if you want to hear a lot of foreign languages that you may have never heard before, you can drop in there, you know, for lunch. What would you want to say to those people?
Well, as Rosario touched on, I think immigration has been a natural part of our country. It's really at the fabric of what America is all about. I mean, we are a nation of immigrants. But by the same token, I think whenever you start to have some issues, as in my business, public safety concerns, then people begin to try to, or their fear begins to build around that, regretfully. Regardless if it's true or not, or how much it contributes to that, the perception of fear begins to take hold.
Maria Teresa, their reaction is not unique. There are communities like that around the country are trying to pass these local laws about, you know, we're going to, if you rent to illegals, these penalties will occur. What is happening in these local initiatives, and are any of them taking hold and in any way working?
Some of them are. I mean, there's a case actually in a small town in Georgia where they passed these ordinances, and unfortunately all the undocumented and legal immigrants and Americans left and as a result the town was devastated. But I think we're missing the broader point. Folks are getting recruited to come to this country. They're coming for work. So how do we deal with the work, and how do we actually start talking seriously about the business aspect of it, of putting it forth?
There are meatpacking plants in the Midwest, like in those Nebraska communities, that have used to be unionized. They aren't anymore, and it's opened it up. You said that you've started off on this subject as a liberal, and you've now moved over to being a conservative. Why have you traveled that road?
Well, really, it's my mom's fault, because when I was much younger and still understanding it all, my perspective was pretty much how we're talking about here. If people are working and people are here trying to contribute, you know, what's the big concern about it? But by the same token, I am the product of a guest worker. My father was a bracero who helped to build the rail lines in California. And so my mother really straightened me out, and she says, wait a minute. She says, there's a way to do things. And your dad waited in line. He completed his contract. He returned home when he was supposed to. He followed the rules. And so I think there's that balance that we have to try to achieve.
Can I jump in there?
Go ahead.
I mean, I think the Bracero program that you're talking about, Sheriff Garcia, is no longer available now to workers. So when you say, let's get them in line, there's no line right now. So how would you address that? And how do you address the whole issue of business playing such a huge role in?
Well, first of all, you got the wrong guy to ask those questions, because that's really, we need to have our legislators address those respective issues. But by the same token, I think there is a lot that's been said about the amount of workforce that's being demanded today, as you say, people are being recruited from other parts of the world, and regretfully, it creates a supply and demand issue that we're all trying to struggle with, and regretfully, it puts local law enforcement right in the middle of this conversation.
Rosario, there are so many different facets of this. There's people who want to talk about just sealing the border first and then consider other things. There's a very large population here, illegal population, 12 million maybe. There aren't enough guys with badges in this country to move 12 million back across that border. Everyone acknowledges that. What should we be thinking about how to deal with the 12 million who are here and staying here?
Well, I think first of all, we need to stop just making Latinos synonymous with immigrant. That's changed many times over the years.
Or illegal immigration. There are very big numbers in Chinese illegal immigration and many other populations.
Yes, and then going back to the supply and demand, the reason why we need comprehensive immigration reform is because the laws that are already on the books don't work anymore. If they did, we wouldn't have this problem, we wouldn't be talking. So what we need to be thinking about is what's right for 2010. We can't keep going back to old pieces of paper, because according to old pieces of paper, I'm not allowed to vote, and as a person of color, you weren't even considered a full human being. So that's why we need to inject humanity into this situation and talk about 30 years ago, it was easier for my grandfather to come from Cuba and make a life for himself. It's much more difficult for anybody to come out of there and do that same thing now. That's why these are new problems, and we need to tackle them with new, fresh ideas, because that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward and be able to be globally competitive, because as we're arguing about these menial jobs that go to high school diploma owners or less, Bill Gates is importing people from China and India because he has jobs that he would love to give to Americans, but we don't qualify for them because we rank 25 in the world in math and 21 in science, and so our education levels are really down. So when you think about that, are we really arguing over jobs that we really want to have? Should we really be pushing ourselves as a culture? And that's why immigration itself can't be talked about in a vacuum outside of the private prison industrial system, healthcare, and specifically education.
We're going to get to our first email question when we come back, and we'll meet a former INS officer who says it's too late for immigration reform. Stay with us.